Hello friends, welcome back to Product and Brand Management. In this last session, focusing on our discussions on product management at large, I would be focusing on an association of reflexivity, design thinking, insight, innovation and value co-creation. We have talked about almost everything separately also in consonance with each other also, but here I would try to make this relationship explicit with perspective of specially new product development, but then you would find several other elements which we have discussed in due course of time alive in this example and in this narrative. This session is primarily based on the fundamentals of these concepts given by eminent authors of their own field. For example, I have referred to Professor Mats Elvisen for reflexivity primarily, other than other prominent authors. Design thinking I have already explained, and Thomas Lockwood is one of the most eminent. He was one of the most eminent thinkers, and his thought process is alive forever. So, and then insight, I am referring to Professor Gary Klein, and innovation we have talked about, value co-creation also we have strong references, and then I would be using on excerpts from specific papers. Apart from this, to make this relationship explicit and strengthen the conceptual build up around these concepts in coherence with each other, I would be referring to one of our own experiments which we have done, a pivotal experimental research should I say, but now it is moving towards expansion and commercialization. So, I would be talking about that and would be explaining it in details. So, here we go and let us see what do we have in store. Let me start with the prospect associated with reflexivity, which means interpreting one's own interpretations. Now, interpreting one's own interpretations, you see I would not say inferences, I would say the way we interpret things have to be further interpreted. Now, interpretation of interpretations, that is how we have to see this perspective. It is not complicated, it is thinking and rethinking on things which we are structuring in our thought process. So, reflexivity means interpreting one's own interpretations, looking at one's own perspective from others' perspective. So, standing this side and standing at that side, and you would remember I have already mentioned that entering into the hearts of the customers or feeling that you are their part actually. So, that is how looking at one's own perspective with others' perspective and turning a self critical eye onto one's own authority as an interpreter and an author. Just reiterate, I will just reiterate this together. Reflexivity means interpreting one's own interpretations, looking at one's own perspective from others' perspective and turning a self critical eye onto one's own authority as an interpreter and author. So, generating reflection from all the sides, if I may aptly conclude or interpret from this definitional framework. Very enduring text, wonderful text, one of the best books I have read, reflexive methodology. So, new vistas for qualitative research. So, this book you may refer to. Now, then another element, and reference is given there, you can use that. Another element of reflection and reflexivity is related to that reflective practice can enable inquiry into what you know but do not know that you know. So, it is very simple. Then further, what you do not know and want to know. That means, you see, you have to enter into your own mind and visualize things and actually revisit your own understanding, and then your desire for further understanding. Then further, what you think, feel, believe, value, understand about your role and boundaries. Then next, how your actions match up with what you believe. There are several quotes on these kind of things in all the languages. If you will just go to any detailed ancient literature of your own culture, language, whichever way you want to look at it, you will find that there are descriptions on these kind of things over there. So, you can take a chord from there as well, although I am referring to contemporary researches given by contemporary authors, and especially in terms of business literature and research literature. Then comes in how to value and take into account personal feelings, how to collate everything and be a part of it and still be outside that. You see, this form of reflection seems to enable practitioners to explore and experiment with areas of experience difficult otherwise to approach, such as what you can change in your context, how to work with what you cannot, how to value the perspective of others, however different they are to you, how others perceive you and their feelings and thoughts about events, why you become stressed and its impact on life and practice, how to counteract seemingly given social, cultural and political structures. So, these are just as I said that this form of the form of reflection we just talked about is it enables practitioners to explore and experiment with areas of experience, otherwise we will not be able to reach there. Then taking you back to design thinking, we have talked about it, but just wanted to reiterate that. So, reiterating, thinking of, thinking about, thinking through, design thinking seems to encompass all three of these qualities. Now, whatever I have talked about reflexivity and reflection seems to have a connect with this definitional framework as such. So, thinking of, thinking about, thinking through is connected to reflection and reflexivity. So, it is very simple, just imagine that you are part of everything, that is all. Then again, just to reiterate the definition by Thomas Lockwood, businesses need to be ambidextrous, so to speak, and to think from both sides, creative and analytical. So, again reflexivity perspective is evident there. Then the definition, once again I have talked about this in detail earlier as well, but just to reiterate this in few words, design thinking is essentially a human centered innovation process that emphasizes observation, collaboration, fast learning, visualization of ideas, rapid concept prototyping and concurrent business analysis, which ultimately influences innovation and business strategy. So, again you would find that the whole context is alive in front of us with relevance to the preceding discussion on reflexivity which we have had just now. And now you may think of writing these all together in parallel and then see the connect. You will find that it may seem like two sides of the same coin. Then comes in insight. Here I am referring to one of another great thinkers of our times, Gary Klein, who talks about connections, contradictions, coincidences, curiosity and creative desperation. So, what what is the connectedness between different elements which we are observing around. It is a very interesting read. The reference is Seeing What Others Do not. So it's a wonderful book, and I would definitely recommend you to read that. So, connectedness, contradictions, and then he has explained several case studies around these elements. So, but just keep this in mind that this is how he has presented a framework on how to look at insight which comes to us, how we think. So, that is the perspective around as far as insight goes. So, reflexivity, design thinking, insight. Now, all these things you would find that they have a coherence, a cord which is connecting them conceptually also. And if you will look at the new products which we have talked about in due course of time, the services and then several examples which we have discussed, you will find that all these seem to be connected in a visible form, in the form of those products, and quite a presentable form in the form of even in the intangibility of the services which are being provided to us. And I have fondly talked about healthcare services as well, Narayan Hrudayalaya as well, and integrated marketing communication of Max Hospital, for example, and so on. Then come in some keywords around reflexivity. Reflective thinking is thinking about the process and parts of our research systematically, in depth, seeking multiple and alternative perspectives. Then another element is reflexivity itself is a state of thinking and being in which we strive to understand the ways in which one's own presence and perspective influence the knowledge and actions which are created. Again, almost the similar kind of a perspective which we have just mentioned. So, just you may do this exercise, that whatever is being discussed, you can write it parallelly on a sheet and then find the common chord, and then start putting up the names of the products where you find these things visible around you. And then those elements can be alive in somewhere which is happening around you as well, in the form of some development or some new thing which is being developed by one of your friends and colleagues and so on. Critical reflexivity has a sociological and political edge. It is concerned with the social conditions of truth itself and with problems of power in the academic research. I have just mentioned this just to give you a composite overview. For discussion on product and service, you may think of separating this element as of now for this within this discussion framework. Now, look at this picture. Socio-economic value creation through forest bio residue based energy generation in alignment with the United Nations SDGs. Now, you see, the point is that this line is actually the name of the project which we did. I will be talking about this as an example, and you would find reflexivity, design thinking, insight, innovation and value co-creation, all of these elements alive together in coherence with each other in this experiment which we did. I'll keep giving you the narrative around it, but just look at this value chain. In the first picture on the left side, you find pine trees which shed pine needles, and you will find a stack of pine needles around. Then those are being shred by the cutters, then processed by a machine, converted into briquettes, and then mobile application is used for the distribution of these briquettes, for selling these briquettes, and then these briquettes are also utilized for household consumption in when to cook the food and for heating purposes, which is through customized stoves and heaters and those kind of devices which we have developed. This whole value chain was developed by us, me and my colleagues, and the members of the group which was constituted, and this group worked on this for large number of years, which would be explicit in the subsequent discussions. So, and you would be introduced to the names of the people as well. But Just keep this value chain in mind, and I will tell you in due course of time along this discussion that how all those elements they came alive when we visited the problem. Just to give you a glimpse, Dr. Kapil Joshi, an IFS officer who did his PhD with me, he discussed this with me in pre-PhD stages, that what should be done in terms of forest fires, and that is how the story started. We came up with a research proposal, and all through the years when he did his PhD with me, and then we got this project from National Mission for Himalayan Studies, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India, and Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee rendered its support in this project, and then University of Petroleum Energy Studies, Dehradun, along with their team members, they supported this project, and all of us we went along, and then Dr. Kapil Joshi pursued his postdoctoral research on this element as well. So this is how the story came on, and it took almost 10 years, but the project was confined to 2 years or so, and it is now alive and going ahead, and we are expanding that. So just it's a quick narrative on this, and let us see what came next to us. So I will be playing a short video for you just to give you a glimpse of, don't think in terms of language, predominantly Hindi language is being used in this video.
ये वृक्ष 700 से 800 मीटर की ऊंचाई से शुरू होकर 1500 से 2000 मीटर तक की ऊंचाइयों तक पाए जाते हैं। यह वृक्ष प्रत्येक वर्ष मार्च से जून के मध्य अपनी शंकुधारी पत्तियों को झाड़ देते हैं। ये सूखी पत्तियां पीरुल के नाम से जानी जाती हैं तथा अत्यधिक ज्वलनशील होती हैं। चीड़ के वृक्षों से झड़ी ये सूखी पत्तियां जंगल की सतह पर एक मोटे हल्के भूरे रंग के कालीन की तरह बिछ जाती हैं, जो कि प्राकृतिक अथवा मुख्यतः मानव जनित कारणों से प्रतिवर्ष अग्नि की भेंट चढ़ जाती हैं। चीड़ वनों में गिरने वाले लाखों टन पीरुल जलकर भारी मात्रा में वायुमंडल में कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का उत्सर्जन करता है तथा चीड़ वनों से उत्पन्न हुई ये आग धीरे धीरे निकटवर्ती बहुमूल्य चौड़ी पत्ती के वनों में भी पहुंचकर पर्यावरण एवं जैव विविधता को अपार क्षति पहुंचाती है।
Now watch the next clipping as well.
नेशनल मिशन ऑन हिमालय स्टडीज द्वारा स्वीकृत सोशो इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू क्रिएशन थ्रू फॉरेस्ट बायो रेसिड्यू बेस्ड एनर्जी जनरेशन इन अलाइनमेंट विद यूनाइटेड नेशन सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स नामक यह प्रोजेक्ट इन्हीं सूखी, खतरनाक एवं ज्वलनशील चीड़ की पत्तियों को उपयोगी बायोब्रिक्स में परिवर्तित करके पर्यावरण की रक्षा के साथ साथ स्थानीय ग्रामीणों को रोजगार, आजीविका के भी साधन उपलब्ध कराने वाला महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम है। यह प्रोजेक्ट इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी रुड़की तथा यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पेट्रोलियम एंड एनर्जी स्टडीज देहरादून द्वारा क्रियान्वित कराया जा रहा है।
Now you see, as I said, pine needles, they have a high capability in terms of energy, and they are highly inflammable, and they are shed by the pine trees every year in very large quantities, millions of tons, and they can remain on the forest floor for large period. Now you see, and they are so light that collecting all the pine needles from all the Himalayan region and bringing those down, it's not feasible. So there are several kinds of issues associated with that, and it has been going for a long period, and then they get the fire breaks and it destroys the habitat around basically. So it's a kind of almost every year recurrence more or less. So although this project has been done in the pilot form, but now holds all the capacity of being expanded, but again the point is this was focused on solving this problem, generating livelihood, converting pine into a product actually, and then generating new processes as well. Remember we talked about innovation in terms of product, processes and marketing. So all three elements were utilized. Reflexivity, how does it comes in? Because we have to know that what are the main causes of fire and how to remove those causes while including everyone in the process, all the stakeholders. And you have to become the part of the problem first, and then part of the people who are associated with that. So that is where reflexivity and design thinking come in, because there you do not have to go for high end, high technology designs. You have to go with very simple manual machines. Those have to be, developed and customized in terms of as far as whatever technology is available. So all these elements of reflexivity, design thinking, insight and innovation, they came together to generate a value, justifying value co-creation. So specific objectives of this project were development of the improved version of a manually operated briquetting machine, which we were working already on that, and it was a heavy version basically. Installation of briquetting machine in the field, production of pine briquettes in the field by beneficiaries, by the community, so that they can earn money all through the year. It is a tough life in Himalayas. Developing value chain for above given product, that is pine briquettes, and development of IT enabled system, mobile application related to the market development of these products. Now again, just watch a clip and you would realize how things were.
इस ब्रिकेटिंग मशीन से सफलतापूर्वक बायो ब्रिक्स बनाई जा सकती थी। इसका भार भी 100 से 125 किलोग्राम मात्र था तथा ये आसानी से दुर्गम स्थानों पर भी ले जाई जा सकती थी। ब्रिकेटिंग मशीन पर ब्रिक बनाते समय यह देखा गया है कि अगर पिरूल कटा हो एवं 1 से 2 सेंटीमीटर साइज का कटा हो तो पिरूल की ब्रिक्स अत्यधिक सुदृढ़ एवं मजबूत बनती है। अगर पिरूल बड़े साइज का हो तो ये बायो ब्रिक्स धीरे धीरे लूज हो जाती है। पिरूल को काट पाना सरल नहीं था। पिरूल में उपस्थित लिग्नेन इसे कटने नहीं देता तथा कटर के ब्लेड को जाम कर देता है। इन सभी समस्याओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए कटर के स्थान पर क्रेशर के निर्माण की परिकल्पना की गई, जो कि सूखे पिरूल को काटने के स्थान पर तोड़ने की कार्रवाई करे। यह क्रेशर मैन्युअली तथा सोलर ऑपरेटेड मोटर से भी चलाया जा सकता है। इस मशीन की परिकल्पना पास्कल लॉ के सिद्धांत पर आधारित है, जिसके अंतर्गत एक उपयुक्त हाइड्रोलिक फ्लूइड के सिरे पर कम फोर्स लगाकर दूसरे सिरे पर अधिक बल उत्पन्न किया जाता है, जो कि विभिन्न मैकेनिकल कार्यों में उपयोग होता है। ऐसी मशीन का प्रारंभिक डिजाइन पूर्णतः काल्पनिक था, जिसके अंतर्गत हाइड्रोलिक प्रेशर द्वारा चीड़ की लूज पत्तियों को डेंसिफाई करके एक फ्यूल ब्रिक बनाने की सोच पैदा की गई। भारतीय वन सेवा के वरिष्ठ अधिकारी डॉक्टर कपिल जोशी द्वारा इस परिकल्पना को साकार रूप देने हेतु IIT रुड़की के अल्टरनेट हाइड्रो एनर्जी सेंटर में लगभग 3 वर्षों की शोध के पश्चात मैन्युअली ऑपरेटेड बायो ब्रिकेटिंग मशीन के 2 मॉडल भी निर्मित किए गए। इन मशीनों के निर्माण के साथ ही यह काल्पनिक तथ्य पूर्णतः सिद्ध हो गया कि हाइड्रोलिक प्रेशर द्वारा लूज पाइन निडल्स को सफलतापूर्वक जलाने योग्य बायो ब्रिक्स के रूप में परिवर्तित किया जा सकता है। इन पिरूल ब्रिकेट्स को लगभग 15 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम की दर से बेचने के कार्य भी वर्तमान में प्रगति पर है। पिरूल से निर्मित ब्रिकेट्स के विपणन हेतु डॉक्टर गौरव दीक्षित द्वारा एक अत्यंत ही सरल एवं बहुउपयोगी यूजर फ्रेंडली सॉफ्टवेयर का निर्माण किया गया। इस सॉफ्टवेयर में भविष्य में सेलर तथा बायर को सम्मिलित करते रहा जाएगा।
You see, this brief clipping altogether suggests how problem was conceived, what were the elements which were considered primarily with an outlook of providing benefit to all the stakeholders, preventing fires, utilizing the pine needles within time with low cost technology which can be easily adaptable, bringing in a socio-economic change altogether. And for this one had to become the part of whole of the system, the people, their thought process entered, one had to enter into the hearts of the stakeholders. And then design thinking perspective was utilized to imagine the complete value chain, the changes which this small change might potentially bring all together. What would happen to the life of women engaged in different kinds of tasks for collecting firewood and those. So, that time would be spared, that also was conceived, because this requires a particular kind of man hours which are not so large as compared to those kind of tasks which they have already been doing. So, getting them free out of that, plus household income generation or enhancement levels and several other things, and then carbon emissions were also considered, and the capacity of this product as a fuel, household fuel, and then saleable product, how saleable it can be was also considered. And just I will be showing you few pictures how these pine needles are collected, then they are processed through choppers, and we can do that through manual choppers or otherwise solar powered choppers, and then manually these are, and there are several reasons why we did not go for so much of automation. Those are well evident, cost had to be curtailed, low maintenance had to be kept in mind, and then this whole process has already been demonstrated to you through the video clippings, and these are the pictures of the cutters and the machines basically, and there are several reiterations on the model which is shown to you have been done. There are several other improved versions which are being developed now, and adaptability level of people is very high. One more thing which is very important for me to share with you is that people have started using this machine for processing different kinds of raw material as well, for developing different kinds of briquettes to be sold for different purposes. For example, nowadays people are processing some kind of a grass, let us say lantana, to produce mosquito repellent briquettes basically, and they are pricing it at a higher price, earning a higher cumulative income. You see, here reflexivity, design thinking, insight is propelling innovation, and then market innovation is coming to fore because you have mobile application with you basically. So, this is how communities were involved, and then mobile application is enabling further propulsion of the whole system. We assume that in due course of time these briquettes can be utilized for industrial purposes as well, and on the other side several improved versions of different kinds of products would come to fore, and several other products would be developed with the same technology. So, this is how we have conceived this project, this is how the whole system is going ahead. A new product has been developed and value co-creation is coming to fore. I would not go in much of the details in what value co-creation is. This is how the briquettes are manufactured, you can see the bundles of briquette in front of you. This is how mobile application works. So a simple application, and this is how they are used for cooking food at the household level. And this is where value co-creation comes in, wherein identifying all the stakeholders touched by the process, understanding and mapping out current interactions among stakeholders, organizing workshops in which stakeholders share experience and imagine ways to improve them, and then building platforms to implement ideas for new interactions and to continue the dialogue among stakeholders to generate further ideas. This is a larger framework of value co-creation. The advantage is that it achieves advantage through the increased engagement of stakeholders, and by continually building new interactions and experiences which lead to higher productivity, higher creativity and lower costs and risks. The larger principles I have already mentioned in brief. Stakeholders won't wholeheartedly participate in customer co-creation unless it produces value for them. So, we assured that the best way to co-create value is to focus on the experiences of all stakeholders. We went all in for that kind of an insight given to us by them, by becoming their part of their thought process. Stakeholders must be able to interact directly with one another. Companies should provide platforms that allow stakeholders to interact with and for sharing their experiences. And that is where I end my discussion on new product development in coherence with reflexivity, design thinking, insight, innovation and value co-creation. That reflexivity and design thinking come all together if we start thinking that way, and we would be generating or developing wonderful products which can instigate a percolative change as well as further thought process in due course of time. I hope you have enjoyed this course till this stage. I will be taking you towards branding and brand management now onwards, and I will be joining you with lots of insight on the subject. Just keep pace with me, just keep following what we have discussed, go deeper into the references which I have used, and let us make best out of it. I will be coming back to you. Till then, goodbye.